We see Paul Spears facing off against Marshall McClarnon. Marshall also with a really cool deck here. Bant Climb with some very unique card choices.
The deck name does not do it justice.
I agree.
There's a lot of cool stuff going on in Marshall's deck.
I agree. Hopefully we'll see some of it. Or maybe not. Maybe Paul will just kill Marshall on turn 4 every time. Maybe turn 3. Who knows what Paul's capable of.
It doesn't look like Paul has a lot of cards.
No. We are looking at about 5 cards, right? Here we see Marshall leading on Llanowar Elves. Paul's going to go ahead and cast another Warlord's Fury. That's it. That's all Paul has for us.
It's not great.
Not like this, Paul. Not like this. I need to see more. I want more Gutter Snipe action.
It's there. It's in the hand. It's just waiting.
Marshall going to take some damage from Breeding Pool here. Casting Biomancer's Familiar.
Hell yeah. Pull that one up on screen.
First appearance of Biomancer's Familiar here in the feature match area, I believe. This is a wild, wild card. Not one I was 100% sure we were going to be seeing this weekend.
It does enable crazy stuff, and it's one of those cards that with each new print potentially gets much better. So it's one of those cards that you just have to kind of bookmark for later, but it looks like it's good enough right now.
Oh boy. So Biomancer's Familiar, as you see there on your screen, activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate. And then you can tap it next time target creature adapts this turn. It adapts as though it has no 1/1 counters on it, able to get multiple adapt activations. But we see a creature definitely ready to benefit from Biomancer's Familiar a little bit here in the form of Biogenic Ooze.
A lot of bios going on, but Biomancer's Familiar also attacks for 2, so that ain't bad.
Yeah, so Paul passing the turn back here. This is unfortunate. No other way to put it. Paul's about to get run over. We're going to have to wait and see if this deck can do its thing in game 2, because here comes some large oozes, Biomancer's Familiar, dealing 8 to Paul, dropping down to 10. Paul will be dead to the board next turn if he does not do anything here. And Marshall making that even more so, tapping 3 mana, reduced cost because of Biomancer's Familiar, making another ooze, as well as an Incubation Druid. You see those oozes all going to get bigger at the end step. Big upside on Biogenic Ooze there. Paul going to take a draw. Probably pick the cards up. There we go.
Also kind of disappointing because Marshall's deck was doing stuff.
Yeah, Marshall could have done some really impressive stuff with a few more turns, but winning is impressive.
It's not bad.
Yeah, I'll take it.
It is acceptable.
So we're going to get our first chance to take a look over at the sideboard of this Mono Red Phoenix deck. We have 4 Lava Coil, 3 Goblin Chain Whirler, 3 Vance's Blasting Cannons. Don't see too much of that card over in Standard. 2 Banefire, 2 Fight with Fire, 1 Mountain. Jerry, what does Paul need here? I mean, this is kind of guessing, right? Paul's deck is wild. We don't know a ton about it. But what do you think he's looking for in this matchup?
I would guess that as this Mono Red Phoenix, I kind of want to call it Mono Red Gutter Snipe, because that's more of what it's doing. The Phoenixes are just kind of incidental there, and it's really the Gutter Snipes and the electrostatic fields that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, especially against a Bant deck that can't remove a lot of their creatures. So for the most part, I would think that Paul just wants to just kind of sit back, draw some cards, get a little value off Gutter Snipe and electrostatic field, which means he needs to slow down what Marshall's doing. So I like the Lava Coils. Fight with Fire could potentially come in if you're expecting bigger things like Wild Growth Walker or Lyra. And then since you're getting a little bit of a higher mana curve, maybe you actually want the extra Mountain. And you saw a couple copies of Llanowar Elves. I don't know if that's enough reason to bring in Goblin Chain Whirler, though.
Yeah, I think that's about the only hit in Marshall's deck. I basically agree with you. May not be enough reason to go to the Goblin Chain Whirler. Meanwhile, on Marshall's side, keep in mind, Marshall may very well think he's facing Is It Drakes right now, right?
Right.
Did you see anything that told him otherwise? I don't think so. I think he saw some crash throughs, a mountain.
Warlord's Fury, that's it.
Yeah, so Marshall may not know exactly what his opponent is on right now. It'll be interesting to see how that affects his sideboard decisions. Jerry, with perfect information, what do you think about Marshall's options here? We have 3 Shieldmare, 3 Baffling End, 2 Knight of Autumn, 2 Ixalan's Binding, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 1 Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants, 1 Lyra Dawnbringer, 1 Vivian Reed. Anything jump off the page there to you?
It really matters what's going on the tournament floor. We're here in the coverage booth. We don't know if the players are talking about, like, oh, did you see this sick Gutter Snipe deck? Or maybe Marshall sat next to Paul because they have the same record, and maybe they saw what each other was up to. But with perfect information, Marshall should definitely go for those Shield Mares, the Baffling Ends, Knight of Autumn, even Ixalan's Binding is a strong card, and Lyra Dawnbringer. But assuming that they only have the information that we do, where you saw just some Warlord's Furies, like, against Drakes, you wouldn't necessarily want Shield Mare or Baffling End or Knight of Autumn. You would go more towards things like Lyra and Vivian Reed and Ixalan's Binding for sure. So you get some overlap there with what cards you want in the matchup, but it depends what Marshall knows.
Yeah, interesting conundrum for Marshall. Also, I'll point out, we saw Paul's deck just completely shrug off a tremendous amount of life gain in the last matchup. So who knows if that's even going to be enough to make a difference. Maybe there's a different tact you're supposed to take to slow down this mono red Phoenix deck. I'm not sure, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do this week. After we finish up here, I'm going to start driving to Roanoke. I want to make sure this deck also gets played on Versus Live. I'm just going to travel the country, forcing people to play mono red Phoenix so I can see it do insane gutter snipe things. Versus Live, of course, brought to you every Tuesday and Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. That's where Ross Merriam, Todd Anderson, sometimes some special guests get together and battle with the hottest decks in Standard, the future technology, the pillars of the format of the future. All that stuff appears often for the first time on Versus Live. Todd, of course, been doing a lot of Teamer Reclamation stuff over there in the past weeks. If you want to check that out, make sure you go to twitch.tv/SCG Tour.
I feel like you could probably just message Todd on Facebook or something rather than making the drive down, but hey, live your life.
Look, I want absolute certainty when it comes to this deck.
Yeah.
I do what it takes. Like I said, previous round, I spent tackling Paul, throwing him to the feature match area.
you don't mess around.
Now I'm driving to Roanoke. I demand efficiency. So here we see Paul. I think we have both players keeping 7, and Paul leading on a Warlord's Fury. Marshall's just going to play a top Hallowed Fountain past the turn back. Here we see Paul with his second land, and here's Electrostatic Field. All right, we're doing our thing this time.
And he did not have that second land. He just picked that up.
Oh, very nice. Certainly a low land count in Paul's deck. We're dealing with
18.
only 18 mountains, so that is something Paul is kind of actively wanting. He doesn't want to draw a lot of lands. He does need to make sure generally he hits that third land to get to the Gutter Skype threshold. Here we see a Shield Mare. I think the jig may have been up here. I think Marshall knew what Paul was playing.
I think he knew.
Yeah, if we're seeing Shield Mare, it seems pretty certain.
Yeah, when you're going off with all these cantrips from the mono red deck, you definitely don't want to flood out. So 18 land might seem a little on the low side, but realistically, when you have Gutter Snipe and the Electrostatic Fields and all that stuff, you want to be able to chain cantrip into cantrip.
Right, and here we found 2 more. Going to do some damage with Electrostatic Field off the Tormenting Voice that was cast. Paul debating what to do with his third mana here. Just going to pass the turn back to Marshall. Marshall untaps, takes a draw.
Not using a Skewer or a Light Up on the stage on this turn.
Here comes Shield Mare rumbling in for 2 damage, galloping in, if you will. And here is Shalai. This feels like this should be a backbreaking card against Paul Spears. We saw him overcome last round. Can he do it one more time? Got to lead with Tormenting Voice, deal 2 damage to Marshall. Drawing 2 fresh ones off the top. There's Gutter Snipe. There's a Shock. Those are the kind of the pieces you want to start putting together if you're Paul.
Yeah, Shock and Skewer can take out the Shalai whenever you want.
Mm-hmm. And here we have Light Up the Stage, revealing Mountain, Arclight Phoenix. Mountain's going to be deployed. I think that Arclight Phoenix might just stay out of play for the rest of the game.
Yeah, Arclight Phoenix is the one card in the deck that is really awkward to hit.
I kind of don't like the Arclight Phoenix. Honestly, out of what we've seen thus far, I just want him to be this super focused Electrostatic Field Gutter Snipe deck. It seems like that's where most of his payoff is.
Yeah, if you're playing Tormenting Voice already and all the 1-mana cantrips, it's hard to say no to Arclight Phoenix because it's
You think it's almost free?
It's such minimal investment. And say you cut the Phoenixes, is there something that you actually want to play instead?
That is a question. Here we see Paul drawing one of his sideboard cards. It's a Fight with Fire. That's going to allow him to deal with that Shalai if he wants to. He's got options on this turn.
It all starts with Gutter Snipe.
And there is the Gutter Snipe entering the battlefield. But it's a Frilled Mystic, Jerry. This is your card. You have been waiting all weekend to see a Frilled Mystic. What a back-breaking first appearance.
Frilled Mystic?
Frilled Mystic.
Targeting Gutter Snipe? Marshall, how dare you?
That is incredible. Incredible stuff.
I'm very happy and very sad at the same time. What is this?
I understand.
There's got to be a word for this.
I don't know. Existence.
Yeah. Ooh.
Getting dark here on SCG. So Marshall gonna rumble into the battlefield with all those creatures. Frilled Mystic having just entered the battlefield. Passing the turn back to Paul. Is he going to be able to rebuild from losing those Gutter Snipes? Let's see. Does still have Fight with Fire, able to take out Shalai if he wants to. Handful of shocks. Maybe we can get there. Oh, does he have it again? Another Frilled Mystic.
This one I'm not that sad about.
Okay. You think you earned this one?
This one is completely reasonable. I'm just really sad about the Gutter Snipe. That's
okay.
all.
Okay. Powerful, powerful play from Marshall here. I think we're just going to see 2 shocks pointed at Shalai here. That is the play. Dealing still the 2 damage to Marshall thanks to those electrostatic fields sitting in play, but I think Paul knows he's got to end this game quickly. That's the way to do it. Get Shalai off the table. Hope to chain some very aggressive spells here. What does Marshall have? A lot of mana available. Looks like we're just going to have attack. Nope, all the creatures are coming in. Obviously blocks over there on the Frilled Mystic. Still going to take 2 from the Shield Mare as it rumbles through.
The fact that Paul just gets to sit back and block with these O4s and even remove creatures with his spells while still dealing damage, like his deck is awesome.
And Marshall, completely not deterred, has the second copy of Shalai. I think Paul may have run into a very difficult matchup here, quite honestly.
I don't know. Frilled Mystic and Baffling End as answers to Gutter Snipe definitely complicate things.
Right. Let's see what Paul wants to try and do here. He's going to cast a Risk Factor, dealing 2 points to Marshall.
That targets.
He's not going to cast a Risk Factor. He's going to pick that up. Having trouble with that Shalai trigger. It's a weird one. Play's just going to be a runaway Steamkin past the turn back. I think this might be the end of Mono Red Phoenix very soon. Its run might be a brief one in our future match area.
I believe.
Here we see some blocks on Frilled Mystic. Chump block over on Growth Chamber Guardian. Paul hoping he's only going to fall to 1 here. Marshall tapping some mana.
He figured it out.
That's going to do it. 1/1 counters on all the creatures. Ends the game. Unfortunately, not a successful return to our feature match area for Mono Red Phoenix. Never quite able to get all of those insane synergies going via Gutter Snipe.